larger research. But actually, Tony had quite an impact on my career. You may not remember it, but I was first introduced to Tony, it was probably in the late 1950s. He was giving a presentation at the Kegs meeting in the now basement meeting room of the old Toronto Engineers Club. It was probably on something to do with this new input system. And I was a student at the University of Toronto. In those days, the students used to regularly attend the Kegs meetings. And I remember the presentation. It started off on a topic which was listed, this is going to be a presentation on some subject. I can't remember exactly what it was, something to do with input. But one thing that I realized once the presentation started, that Tony always had a very sort of flexible attitude towards titles of presentations. You might start on that title, but it soon varied into all sorts of other interesting and fascinating topics. I think this presentation started on some early input results, but it soon ranged into the potential for airborne geochemistry, and maybe even touched on using radio waves or radio transmissions as a means of airborne EM. And I came to the conclusion that as the presentation went on, that Tony probably, while making that presentation, developed 5 or 6 brand new ideas and thought up several different systems for airborne geophysics. And the other lasting impression I had, which became a conviction, was that this geophysical business is an awful lot of fun, and it's a good business to get into. So Tony has been perhaps one of the most, over the last almost 50 years, one of the most creative minds in geophysics. And as Duncan mentioned, always creative, sometimes not quite practical, but always creative. And one of his lasting legacies has really been the input system. And I should set the stage a little bit. When input was introduced, the electromagnetic in geophysics was completely dominated by frequency domain. Whether you were talking fixed-wing airborne helicopter systems, drill hole EM or ground EM, it was all frequency domain systems. And when input was introduced, it was a time domain system. This was something new. But obviously input was going to change that impression very quickly. And based on the licensing of the input system to CGG and Geophysics, and also the formation of Questor surveys and a string of very successful discoveries attributed to the input system. By the middle of the 1970s, input was the dominant airborne EM system. And even when new systems were introduced in the mid-80s, such as QuestM and GeoTem, for all intents and purposes, they were really input systems with digital receivers. So this input had a great impact on geophysics. And at the same time, in the 80s, other people, Duncan Crone and others, were leading the push of time domain geophysics, or time domain electromagnetics, into the areas of borehole geophysics and the ground systems. And now and this has evolved now with the sort of the last bastion of frequency domain, which were the helicopter systems being breached by the rapid development of helicopter time domain systems. It could very well be that in complete contrast to the 1950s and 1960s, where electromagnetics was dominated by frequency domain, it's now dominated by time domain. And so, Tony, your lasting legacy is really the development of the input system, but more so in a broader sense, you were probably leading the charge into the application of time domain electromagnetics throughout our whole exploration spectrum. So although I never worked directly for you, in fact I was probably spent more of my career as a competitor in the days at McFar and as a client when we were applying input surveys in the Athabasca for uranium. I'd just like to thank you really for your contributions to geophysics, but more so, in a broader sense, your contribution to showing us younger people like myself when I was young, and I hope younger people in the future, that this business is a lot of fun. So thank you, Tony.